Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome. Let me get back to the right screen on my computer. Silly me.
Yes, prepared.
Well, yeah.
Sorry,
Getting distracted.
that was my fault. I ran away just before the timer went off.
You goose.
My bad.
I'm Josh, Simon,
Hello.
and the ever absent Matt. We are in a band called Frights, and we are taking everyone on a journey through our growth as a group of artists, I guess, as musicians.
Yes.
Or not musicians in your part.
Well, I don't
You're
know.
kind of musical.
Do I need
pretty
to just accept it at some point?
I think you should do. You're in a
This
band
is my
at this
life
point.
now.
And
Gross.
And
I've
what?
become the thing that I've always hated.
Yeah, what, a musician?
Yes.
Music would be better without musicians. That's what I've always said.
That's so.
So we're taking you guys on a journey from nothing through to something. So hopefully sustainable careers as artists. We gave up our corporate jobs, basically, kind of. I mean, I'm kind of doing that a bit still.
They're holding on by a thread.
Yeah, but we're making a deliberate decision to try and have some fulfillment in our lives beyond the corporate world, because we all know how that is.
Chase your dreams.
Yep. And you know, and all the hurdles and fun stuff that goes along with that, the learnings, the failures, the successes, etc., etc.
The high highs and the low lows.
Yeah, and success looks like us doing this nine weeks not 9 weeks in a row, because we missed a week because of technical difficulties, but we've done it 9 times so far in 10 weeks, and I think that's something to celebrate.
Yeah.
You reckon?
Yeah, I think we've made significant progress in that 10 weeks as well. In terms of the planning out what we're actually doing and kicking some initial goals.
And just getting to grips with the idea of being in a band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just being realistic about what it takes to find success in this space, being realistic about the amount of time it takes.
Yeah. I actually think that it's a good point, because I felt, particularly in the last week, for me, I've been finding it a lot easier to be productive now that we seem to be building momentum. I think these initial hurdles that I've always felt, and that I'm sure other artists feel, are this overwhelming, like, how do I make this a thing that actually works? And I've been feeling that less in the last week, personally. I like a couple of things that happened this week for me. We got the first track up in distribution, and it's being distributed as we speak for the future, for the release in a couple of weeks' time. And then I've also started a remix of that thing on my own, and we've also started like a hip hop kind of sampled thing based on the samples from Only Yesterday, which is the track that is coming out in a couple of weeks. And this was all done in and around other work that I was doing, which is like, in the past has been really hard for me to maintain.
Well, I don't mean to speak for you here, but it seems like for you and for a lot of other people that we've come across in the last couple of years, these kind of efforts tend to be pretty chaotic and ad hoc. They happen if they happen, and if they don't, they don't. And a lot of what we've been setting up over these last 10 weeks has been structures, models that help to give us clear hierarchies and steps and goals and reasons why to do these things that help to propel that stuff forward and to make clear when there's gaps, when there's opportunities, when there's these things to fill out and help contribute to that overall growth and increase in the kind of surface area of the thing that we're creating.
I think the other thing that's been a real big thing in that respect is particularly the word intention. For me, has been a big driving force behind the way that I've been growing as an artist in the last couple of weeks, since we kind of started this project, really. Because as you said, before this it was ad hoc. We had a writing session that we did regularly, but nothing else. And we had a lot of fun in the writing session. I think this kind of comes down to dopamine to a degree as well for me, because the things that I got a lot of fulfillment out of, and I've dealt with other artists that also seem to get a lot of fulfillment out of it but never get anything done. You get a lot of fulfillment and you get a lot of like, oh, I'm doing something feeling from ideation, from just kind of writing demos and not finishing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, which is effectively the same thing as ideation. Jamming, which is, having fun, and it's fine to jam. And then like, like just doing, telling people about the thing that you're going to do, has been in the past problematic because you get the reward before you've done the work. And that's where intention comes in for me, because it's such a for me, but right now, it's a very powerful word. It's actually kind of deciding a lot of how I spend my time. Like, do I intend to spend my time now making a remix, or am I just sitting here because I feel like I have to do this right now?
Yeah.
And then convincing myself that me sitting there doing nothing is me doing the work. I mean, in some cases that could be true. Like sometimes you need to kind of sit in it for a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But the problem is that you tend to sit there and it becomes like, it's as if you felt like you had to do the thing, but you're not actually doing it. Like you're not committing, you're not intending to do it. You're just intending to sit, like you've gone there. Yeah, it's hard to explain. It's like, it's procrastination effectively, but it's like really shitty practice basically. So like, intention has been a big buzzword for me this week when it comes to that kind of stuff. And it's kind of really helped me personally start to kind of build that, or continue to build that momentum,
Yeah.
Having these chats has been helpful too. It's like a little therapy session, mind you.
Yes.
How have you felt?
Tell me about your childhood.
Yeah, we already know all about that. How about for you? How's your week been?
Yeah, my week has been good this week. In terms of, I've been doing a lot of digesting and not quite as much progress as I'd intended, but that is kind of par for the course. Mm-hmm. I never quite seem to get as much done as I ever hoped to, and I've become comfortable with that existence. But speaking of structures and models and these sort of things, the things that we've been establishing these last few weeks have helped to inform the marketing campaign activity that I'm planning for this first release. So this will be starting to roll out over the next, it'll start rolling out in about a week, mm-hmm. and will run over the course of however long it runs. There's going to obviously be a spike of activity at the very beginning, and then more longer tail things out over the next 6, 8, 12 weeks.
Yep.
So the planning work that we've been doing here over the last 2 or 3 weeks around meta-narratives, personas, and the actual asset definition things, while what we've shown on stream has been pretty sort of wibbly-wobbly and loose, it's given me a lot to then go back and refine and start to build that really clear picture about what those things are and where they provide value to an audience. And now we can start to go out and build those specific things with those in mind and have that intention, have those goals that are there to be hit, and have clear metrics about when things are successful or less successful, where it's worth spending the time or not worth spending the time, and just be really effective in that rollout. So that'll be things. So this next week for me looks like building things like press releases, building social content, artwork, booking in podcast and radio appearances, all this kind of stuff, so that we can make those connections we spoke about. We've got the track, we've got the meta narrative, we've got the people that we want to speak to, and we're now bridging the gap between the two.
Yeah.
So that stuff is all now feels very well informed. There's a really clear picture.
Yeah.
And it feels like a really good place to be, to it comes from it's now a place of being able to build with a sense of confidence. It's not just shooting into the dark and hoping that we hit some target somewhere, which tends to be the case with a lot of, at least observationally, artists that are doing the indie DIY thing in this kind of space. That seems to be the approach, is I'm just going to throw stuff out there, hope it lands.
Yeah.
Which can be fine. And it's particularly fine if you've got lots of time to spend on it, but we don't. So trying to be more effective is, I think, 9 times out of 10 going to be a good move. And for us is always going to be a good move.
Well, yeah, I kind of want to counter that particular point a little bit on the, it's okay if you got plenty of time to faff about thing. I don't think it is. And this is the argument that not argument, because it's not an argument, it's me expressing my opinion generally, and it's other people listening and then just kind of not doing anything.
We know how... Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. What?
You know how we know it's your opinion?
Because I just said that.
Because it's coming out of your mouth.
Yeah, I know, but, whatever.
You don't need to qualify it. Go on. Be bold.
I will be bold. I think this is why the word intention is my buzzword of the week, basically.
And every week.
And every week. I have a lot of problems with if 2 scenarios, right?
Okay.
Scenario number 1.
Take me on the journey.
So scenario number 1 is you're gonna have a jam and you're gonna have some fun. Scenario number 2 is you're doing something for a purpose, right? As in say the if you walk into a jam and your intention is to jam, that's fine. If you walk into the studio and jam when your intention was to make a song, then you're fucking stupid. I'm so sick and tired of being nice about it. If you do not walk as an artist, you're spending a lot of money on studio time, or if you're at home, you spent a lot of money on equipment. You only get so much time to exist on this planet, and you want to make a record. I'm as guilty as this as anyone, particularly recently, not particularly recently, but particularly before recently. Now I'm a lot more structured in what I do. I'm getting stuff done and I'm leaving stuff behind once it's finished.
Yeah.
And not getting hung up on perfection and things like that. But one of the biggest problems is that artists will go, oh yeah, studio time, great, it's going to be awesome. And then morning of the studio time, they're like, oh shit, I didn't get that guitar pedal, or I'm not going to be able to, my guitar hasn't been serviced, the fucking E string's not the intonation's not right. How am I meant to play that chord in tune or whatever, right? And it's or they turn up to the studio with a guitar that doesn't work, because the electronics in it are fucked or whatever. These things are huge problems. And it shows a lack of thought and a lack of intention as an artist. And if your intention is to be a professional, then this is unacceptable.
Yeah.
If you were to turn up, let's just say you worked, let's say you work at a cafe, right? And you are you're the one who, kind of clears the tables and presets the tables and all that for customers. If you just decide that you're going to turn up to work and just stand there, you're not actually doing the job that you kind of went there to do.
Yeah.
That's not a very good example, but you get the idea.
No, but it does. It's the example that I have used in this before is a little bit more wider than that, which is that we need to acknowledge that music and the making of music is a marketplace. You've got, it may not be a marketplace in the way that we traditionally think of it, but you have people that use a service and choose how to spend their time consuming a product.
Yeah.
You as a musician are making the product.
Yeah.
So in every other marketplace, that product is well considered and has very clear outcomes for how it should be received. If we use the cafe example, right? If you turn up to the cafe and the vibes are great, but the coffee machine doesn't work.
The
There's-
tables are covered in clutter,
That's right. It doesn't work in the market.
No.
No one can consume the product.
and no one's going to go there.
Exactly. And
They're
the
gonna-
cafe will close.
Yeah, and you will go
Um,
out of business. You know, like it's totally fine if you like to play music. It's totally fine just to play music, and this hurts me a little bit inside because, like, I think part of me just wants to play music, but there's another bigger part of me that wants to make a run of it. You know.
Yeah.
And what that looks like is a lot of hard work and a lot of effectively sacrifice. You know, and it's fine to be a hobbyist. There's nothing wrong with having having an acoustic guitar, and when you get home from work, picking it up and playing tunes.
Wonderful.
Or just writing tunes for yourself.
Freebird.
Yeah, whatever. You know, or whatever. You know, Jack Johnson, or you know, Kyle. What's his name from Tenacious D?
Gas.
The best,
What are you looking for?
the best, like one of the best guitarists in the world. That dude. Anyway, you know, like. You can sit on your couch. I know a guy I went to uni with actually who he is an incredible guitarist, incredible banjo player, and an incredible all other string instruments player basically when it comes to that kind of guitar-y lute kind of thing. But he has no ambition of being a musician. He just likes to play, and so he just plays.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be an artist, you know, and maybe that's the case. Like maybe the reason that you're not engaging with it is because it's not for you, and that's okay. But I think that there's this perception that if you're a good player, then you have to show the world.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the case.
There's all sorts of shades in between as well. Like
Yeah.
going and having a music career in which you are a session musician means that you don't have to do a lot of this stuff. You have your proficiency in your instrument.
Mm-hmm.
You have some level of networking that you have to do to exist as a session musician,
Mm-hmm.
to have that work rolling in, to be known to the local studios and an artist pool that you're available to be doing this kind of work. But you don't need to be advertising more widely to the other sections of the market. Your market is much smaller.
Yeah.
And
And you might not do it all the time either. You might do a couple every, month, and that's enough,
yeah,
And you're still getting to exercise those skills.
Mm.
Anyway, we're kind of getting off topic a little bit, but the point is that intention's really important. If your intention is to be as an artist, you need to walk into every session with the intention of producing the thing that you need to in that 4 hours or whatever. The goal is I'm going to come in and we're recording beds for this song, or we're coming in to produce BVs for this track that we've already got.
but even wider than that, like having intention about what the end product, like the clarity of vision. I think if we're talking about spending time effectively,
Yeah.
and again, I feel like I need to keep clarifying this because you don't have to look far to find exceptions to this rule as well. Like, let's be clear. There's great examples like that song The Lowrider, for example. That band, I can't remember the name of them right now, but they War, yeah, like their process was to go into the studio and jam out,
Yeah.
but they had structures in place around who their producers were and this sort of thing, where they would then slice up the jam.
That's kind of how FNL worked originally. Like there was a structure around that session. It just didn't, and it was never intended to go further when we started doing it. So it was just a jam session, and that's why I think it worked so well, because there was so
It was
much
loose,
intention around. No. Well, it was loose, but it was intentionally loose. Like we went into that session with a process.
Yeah.
And then we came out of the session with something that we were happy with because we'd succeeded in executing on the process that we'd designed, And the same goes for everything else. I think the problems I'm having recently with the artistry stuff are just understanding these processes around things. Like working on this remix at the moment is quite hard because it's like I've never made a remix before. And part of the intention behind producing remixes is to work with other artists, not necessarily do it ourselves. But I was talking to Gentleman Leader, who's doing the hip hop thing. It's not really a remix, but like a sampled hip hop thing that has has verse over the top of it and everything. about what he's been working on with in regards to the stems that I sent through for only yesterday. And we were going backwards and forwards about, what it looks like to kind of practice this stuff. And he was like, well, I said to him, like, at some point we're going to want to do this with other artists. And he's like, yeah, cool. That's great. Why aren't you doing it now? And I said, well, like, we could go out, like, I could open my black book and pick any number of professional musician that I know to go and do it with, who've got an artistic practice, who have music out in the world, who have sustainable careers already, right? The people who we want to associate with effectively. And my reply was like, I don't want to do that yet because I'm not confident that we have our processes set up and they're refined enough to be professional in that part of the world, with those people who are already set up like that, because they've already got their processes.
So you just wanted to have a crack at taking your hat off of like I've made this track, and then putting on the other hat of now I'm going to imagine that I'm
someone else,
a musician receiving this stuff. How do I feel about it? What could be better? What could be different?
Well, yeah. How do I make something new out of this, material? Is it interpolation? Interpolation, is that the word?
No. Yeah, I mean, I think that might be something slightly different.
What's another word for sampling? Like, there's another word that they use.
Yeah, I mean, that is what interpolation is, where you, like, recreate a part.
Yeah.
Would be interpolation, as
Yeah.
far as I understand it. Or, like, riffing on a particular...
Yeah, I mean, you're riffing on an idea, when you're sampling stuff. And that's the kind of idea, is that we want to be able to kind of present the works in a couple of different ways. Yeah, so me engaging in the process is like me understanding how some of these other artists might work when I give it to them and what I should expect back. You know what I mean? Each artist works differently, sure, and people are busy and whatever, but I can, comfortably say I did this in a couple of weeks, or I did this in a day.
Yeah.
And these are the processes I used to get it there, and this is what the broad brief would be for something like that. Because, part of the problem, we're just going, here's some stems, can you make something out of these? Is like, where there's no intention or vision behind that.
And that's a recipe for it sitting on the back burner for 18 months.
Yeah.
And then it's being totally forgotten about.
And it's the same with your Spotify playlist thing, where, you make these Spotify playlists and send them to people and say, can you, like we'd love if you could share this, you like our stuff, can you share this out? You're giving them, that's an extreme example, but you're giving them the work is already done. There's a little interaction that they have to make. And in a musician's case, that's a fun interaction because they're making music and they're like, oh yeah, I've got an idea.
Yeah, you've given them a scaffold and they're just kind of colouring it in.
And they just build the building on the inside of it or whatever.
Doing the interior decorating.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess this comes down, like, to close that part of it off, the intention has been a big kind of conversation for me this week because of the previous weeks where intention has been hard, particularly in like the mixing and some areas like that. So, but I like it. It's a real motivating word for me.
Great.
Yeah. So, well, we got out the first track. It's on Too Lost. We decided to use Too Lost, and I just want to quickly run through some of the hurdles that I had with that particular. Or some things that I should have had at the start of that process. So the biggest thing, well, part of it was artwork. We hadn't really thought about artwork, and I kind of messaged you and said, can you put together some artwork for this quickly? And you did that, and that was great. And so that was one of the things. There was a whole heap of stuff around credits that I didn't really think about. So like...
this is like the P line and C line stuff, is that right?
No, the P line and C line is the copyright in the circle, and it's it's that thing. So that was fine. Like what was the P? What did the P stand?
Well, that was like the publishing.
Yeah, so copyright is effectively
performance or something.
Yeah, or performance or publisher or whatever the P stands for. That's that's to delineate, I think, between the two different royalties. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure, but that's something that I'm still figuring out, and we'll figure it out, because I think, again, in this process, it was like, okay, the intention and the goal of this process is to put a song out and claim all the artist page stuff on the various platforms under that name. And you can't do that until you put a song out. So that was the primary intention of putting out only yesterday. The secondary intentions were to test some of these processes and start to build processes around these things that you have to do to release a song.
So what other hurdles were there?
So not having everyone's details. So this, had...
Is that like APRA registrations and things?
Well, APRA's part of it. That's a different thing. That's not even done through this part of the process, right?
So when you say details, what are we talking about?
Just who worked on it for starters. Like I wasn't clear on... Because I wasn't at the initial writing session, I didn't know necessarily who was on it. So I had to message a few people, and that was time consuming. That should have been information that I had
documented from the start
already. Just understanding some of the things like on Too Lost, there are 450 distributors that you can manually select to distribute to.
It's a lot of checkboxes.
A lot of checkboxes. And it's not clearly... Like they're not in groups or anything. So, one of our things was not putting it in sync libraries. And that, I took it out of Canva and Pinterest, but that was all I did on this one. You can alter these things later. That was one of the things that I learned. You can also alter the credits later. There's a whole heap of shit you can alter later, which is awesome because it meant that I was able to push through the process and know that I can go back and fix that stuff up. So that was kind of part of it, right? It was like, okay, figuring out what stuff was important now and what stuff I can deal with later, just to get it out there, because that was the primary goal. So that was part of it. The APRA stuff was important too. So the writing, registration, and all that kind of stuff was important. So hunting down the various people's details. Some people didn't have writing accounts anywhere, which I find problematic. So people had to register.
Me included.
Bree didn't have one either. So
really,
yeah, I would have thought that she would have.
That's surprising.
Yeah. So that was part of it. She's effectively worked as a session user in the past, so not necessarily interacting with the writing component. Though I would argue that she has always interacted with the writing component, but that's me.
Memphis Rules.
Yeah, whoever was in the room. Yeah. That's Memphis Rules, right?
Yeah, that's an equal split for whoever was in the room on writing credits.
Yeah, we're not quite Memphis Rules, but we're close.
Memphis-ish rules.
Yeah, well, there's kind of an equal split for the writing process, and then there's the production process, because there's a lot of work that goes into that after. What else was problematic? That was about it. It was really just the distributors that was kind of a big... the other part was it. In addition to the distributors, it has non-traditional distribution paths. So some of them, I can't remember exactly the names of the services, but effectively they were sampling services. So you could upload stems in a similar idea to what we're talking about, interacting with our audience and some of the musicians around us by giving them access to the stems.
Yeah, but these just go into giant platforms.
This just goes into big platforms. Right. So that if an artist or a DJ is like putting a set together, they can easily pull and have the right to use those things, And these are paid platforms in similar ways to Spotify, except you get access to more things. That was just one of them, or there was a couple that were like that, and there were others that did other things.
Right.
So that put it into different digital marketplaces effectively. And I didn't necessarily understand those services. The only other thing, there were also some other registrations that you could do similar to an ISBN. ISBN, is that what it is on the book?
Yes.
Yeah. Similar to ISBN, there's a song version of that. And how that process works. You can supply them, and it was clear. Like Too Lost was great because it has all these great FAQs, which really helped. But they were there was a lot of getting my head through those, and I'll have to do it again next time just to figure it out. But a lot of those numbers are assigned when you submit and distribute it through a distributor like Too Lost.
Yeah, so they'll generate the number.
So they'll generate the number, and then we can attach that to the writing credits and publishing credits. And
I suppose the good news about the process that we're engaging in, when we're releasing a track, that it's going to be normal for there to be a remix and an acoustic version and a whatever. There's going to be more fall off each track is that you get to do this multiple times every time we do a release.
Mm.
You're going to get very good at this very fast. Have you documented this?
I've kind of started, but I haven't done it.
Because it would be very helpful to have a checklist of like a pre-launch checklist that has things like we need this type of artwork and that type of artwork and blah blah blah, so that then we know what's important before and we know what can happen in that 2-week period while it's being ingested, and really ramp up to being that time efficient version of that process. Now that we've got some data points to go on.
Yeah, and we'll get to do that because the remixes that we're going to release, there'll be I'm going to try and put one up for distribution later this week, and then the intention is that the hip hop one will go up next week.
Yeah, great.
So I've got to finish a remix in the next couple of days, basically, is what I'm saying.
Great.
Which should be fine. But yeah, anyway.
So
remixes, talked about that, and the balance working stuff. Is there anything else you want to talk about this week?
I think I've already kind of spoken about what's happened in my week and what this next week looks like for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in a very happy place. Like I feel more informed now than I have at any other point in the process. So that's kind of all the groundwork is laid to start firing on all cylinders to get this kind of campaign activity done in a real confident way.
Yeah, confident and intentional. I think one of the things that I've been finding it hard, and this is definitely a process thing, is figuring out the goal setting stuff and trying to be a bit more true to the goals that we've set around what we're doing. Like I get lost a little bit when I'm making stuff and when I'm working through these processes, and part of that is because I'm learning those processes as well. So it is
totally
it's certainly hard to remember. Oh, we agreed that like earning money is important, so we need to be able to leverage this in the best way that we can, or whatever. You know, that was just an example, but I think to be more efficient for me, one of the things is like maybe on these streams is the place to do it is to kind of just every week check in on those goals and see how we work towards them. So like frame this talk that we're having here in respect to those goals.
Yeah.
You know,
long term and even medium term, that's definitely something that's on my radar. And when it's sort of justifying the raison d'etre for these streams, that was
part of it,
high on the list of why we do it.
Yeah,
to keep aligned, to keep that real direction set. But at the moment, we simply don't have enough data points like that. It's become clear that really is something that we need at least a few tracks out to be able to kind of triangulate and shape where we're headed.
Yeah.
At the moment, there's a little bit of just embracing the chaos.
The chaos. Oh, and there's definitely been that. I think that's been obvious.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with it being that way, and with the full acknowledgement that part of what we're doing here is building proficiency as well, and for the exact same reason that we haven't started doing any kind of audience building around this part of the product.
Yeah.
Is exactly part of that. Like we don't have that critical mass of space to be able to maneuver in yet. But we will. We're getting so close.
Well, I mean, there's people watching right now, apparently.
Oh.
So that's...
Well, hello.
That's nice.
You know.
And this is a new thing of the last 2 weeks. Like, we haven't really had audience that we've noticed. And then I look over here, and there's a couple of eyeballs on the screen.
Well, there you go.
And that hasn't happened, you know. But it's not, you know, we haven't intended to do that yet, like you said. Like the audience building stuff will happen. Like we haven't got any mechanisms for providing special content for fans, or you know, we haven't set up a Patreon or anything like that. And these are things that are important in our goals of being sustainable, having sustainable artistic careers, is being able to pay the rent. You know.
Yeah.
and buy fuel and bloody food and shit.
Eggs, bread,
Eggs, yeah.
guitars.
Well, we don't need any more of those.
Oh, okay.
We got plenty of guitars. I think we've got enough.
Sacrificial guitars for smashing.
Yeah, sure.
Because that's the kind of band we are, apparently.
Yeah, we're going to smash guitar. I would cry, even if it was a cheap guitar, a cheap, nasty guitar from, like, I don't know, the $2 shop. I would cry.
Like a ukulele, maybe?
Yeah.
Would you cry a little bit? Just
Yeah.
one single
I
tear
don't
for a
know.
ukulele?
I have a real problem with waste. You know this.
I do know.
You know,
Yeah.
and waste even of stuff that is cheap is not something that I'm a fan of.
He's a hoarder, everyone.
I'm not a hoarder. That's not true. Don't listen to him. I am a trash goblin. It's different.
It's different. It's a different thing. It's a sparkly hoarder.
Yep. All right. So I think that like we'll continue to refine this leading section of our stream as we go. Part of the refinement
everything
this
else.
week was to be a bit less waffly.
Okay.
And get on with it. So,
Well, on that note, shall we take a little...
well, do you have anything else to say in this part?
I think we're fine.
You're fine. All right. Well, what we will do now is we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and have our big topic discussion, which is in the title, around what is the music industry, because I think it's not very clear to a lot of people, including me, and I've been in the industry for 12 years.
Yeah, it's a term that gets thrown around in a very generic sense.
Yep.
Oh, the music industry is doing this, or
Yeah.
and it's
What's that mean?
it's so amorphous
Yep.
as to not be helpful.
Yep.
And yet we all do it. So
And the great thing about this man is he's got a piece of paper with to show you what it is.
wow,
Got a diagram.
I've been doing drawings.
Yeah, you have.
Okay.
All right, well, we'll be back momentarily. So we are Frights. I'm Josh. This is Simon, and Matt's around.
Hit us with any questions in the comments.
Yeah.
Little eyeball people.
Yeah, if
And-
you've got any questions, we love to hear from you. So we're Frights, and we will see you guys
In 5.
in 5. That was a weird way of saying hello.
It was.
Anyway.
Sound like you were gargling marbles.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome back. We are Frights, the band, with music to come out in 10 days. So that's good.
10 days.
10 days. I think it's 10 days. It's the 4th of June, July.
That makes me very nervous.
Why?
Because that means I've got a lot to do in 10 days.
You do have
But that's
lots to
okay.
do. That's all right. Like this is
It's also never not the case.
Yeah.
So
I think it's important to remember that this part of the process, which is the first release, is about learning.
yeah.
Yeah.
The whole thing's about learning.
I know.
We're never not learning.
This is very much about learning. Anyway.
This is more about learning than the next time will be.
Yeah. Well, so we're Frights. We're a band, and we're taking everyone on a journey through our, our move towards. I used the word journey already. Our journey towards sustainable artistic careers, where we are fulfilled and producing cool shit
We're chasing our dreams, everybody.
and chasing dreams. There's the one. I keep forgetting to say that.
Oh, well, I mean, it's not written down anywhere, is it?
Well, I mean, it kind of is. It's definitely in. I was looking at the only yesterday release cycle document this morning, and it says "Chasing Dreams," even though it's crossed out. But that was because that was a working title. But it does say "Chasing Dreams" in that document.
That's a very bad working title.
Well, it was a very bad. It came up in the brainstorm. Nothing's a bad idea in the brainstorm. Everything's a bad idea. That's why it's got to cross out.
Okay, fine. Anyway.
No, so we definitely have used that word in the documentation.
But it still stands that that's what we're doing here. You know, we have taken a step back from successful corporate jobs because if there's ever a time to take a punt on something risky, it's when you've got all your stuff figured out. So the best time
and the industry is favourable.
Oh, in
said move.
massive downturn. Yeah, there's something to be said for that as well. We're fighting an uphill battle because downhill battles are
boring. Yeah, exactly. So in this part of the stream, we are going to talk about what the music industry is.
That's right. So the music industry gets spoken about as a big amorphous thing, and it's not always helpful to think of it that way, especially when you are doing a DIY thing like we are, and like lots of indie artists are, where they don't have a lot of support from label services, etc. So we are going to explore that. Given that we are wearing many hats across lots of the process, we're going to wear many hats.
I've only got one on.
Just one hat?
I've got many hats in the car.
You don't have a hat under your hat?
Not yet.
No?
No, I've got hair.
Ah.
Kind
What
of
is that if not a human hat?
Yeah.
I've considered going Chrome Dome before. Have you? Go on the
My
full Bruce
partner
Willis?
would kill me. She'd get sad. She wouldn't kill me. She'd just get sad. Yeah.
Because she killed you?
Maybe. No.
Anyway.
She likes hair.
Fair enough.
I like hair, to be fair. I think I'd get cold. I got cold when the sides of my head were shaved. Anyway. What is the music industry, Simon? Please inform me.
Are you ready for some diagrams, Josh?
I'm ready.
I've
Do you
got
want me to
diagrams.
bring up this diagram that I've got here?
Well, no. First of all, I just want to talk in a more general sense.
Okay.
Okay. So, after I've just talked about how unhelpful it is to talk so generally,
we need
and
to
amorphously.
frame it up, don't we?
Let's frame it up.
Yeah.
So, in our efforts to do the DIY thing, we fully acknowledge that we're going to have to be responsible for a lot of processes that, in a more traditional, established band kind of context, would be the roles of other people that they'd be farmed out those functions.
Yeah.
So, with the view that we
Sorry, I'm just getting some sustenance so we can continue on.
with the view that we're taking responsibility for all of our successes at this point.
We are.
It's going to be helpful for us to know what those functions and processes would be, so that we can be effective in taking them on and make sure that nothing falls through the cracks.
Yep.
So that's the reason for investigating this in the way that we are. Is that remaining effectively while bypassing as much as possible and keeping control of as much as possible. So the other part of this is, now we've spoken about a lot of these kind of what I would think of as mid-tier things. We've talked about these kind of marketing things and these production parts, but we haven't set the stage in a more macro sense for where those live in the space of an actual industry setting. Mm-hmm. So we're taking a step back up the ladder to kind of look at that overarching structure that exists in this kind of really unforeseen way, or unseen way.
I'm learning.
Good. You're doing a big learning. So that when we're doing these like little mid-tier things, we're understanding where they fit in much the same way that we've just spoken about when we're doing any task, how they should be laddering up to a goal.
Yep.
We can also be thinking about where they live in terms of an industry structure.
Yeah, where it's structured.
Yeah. Because like it or not, if we're going to be releasing music, we're going to be interfacing with this industry.
Yeah.
And
it's a hard one.
And it is generally considered to be a hard one. So, the industry itself,
mm-hmm.
as that amorphous blob, has a reputation for being hard, for being full of opportunities for abuses of power, for being full of jerks that want to just take a cut for doing very little,
mm-hmm.
Or doing what is perceived to be very little.
Which I think we've realised is actually not very little. I mean,
there's an argument to be made that the product that a lot of these people have is network.
Totally.
They have access.
Yeah.
And what you're paying them 10%, 20%, etc. for
is that network.
Is access to that network and access to their access.
Yeah. When you look at it like that, it suddenly becomes a lot more palpable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's about understanding what other people do, which is what this discussion is about. You know.
So, with that in mind, I have put together a little diagram, which Josh will pull up now.
Cue the diagram. There it is.
Which is an artist-centric view of music industry roles and responsibilities. As far as I can tell. Look, I'm going to fully acknowledge that there's probably room for interpretation, and that I am not someone who has a massive amount of form in this area. I've put this together through reading and research, not through necessarily personal experience.
Yeah, and from what I can tell, it's it's different depending on. It's not different, but the structures are slightly different depending on where you go, because some record labels will have certain things and not, and some businesses only offer some label services and not others, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like the major record labels obviously do kind of everything.
Yeah.
But smaller record labels, they might only deal with distribution in one market, such as Australia or North America or whatever.
That's right. So what I've done here, sorry, I'm just pulling these up on my screen too so I can see what I'm doing, what I'm talking about.
Yep.
So let's just step through the model quickly. So in the middle, there's obviously the artist.
Mm-hmm.
That's us.
Hi. Frats.band.
That's right. Check out frats.band to see the artist in action.
There's nothing there. Well, there's not nothing there. That's the website. That's where all the links are.
Follow the socials.
Follow the socials and stay up to date.
That's right. So the artist in the middle, because that's what we're gonna, that's us. That's what we're gonna be viewing the rest of the model from, that perspective. Now, the immediate team for an artist typically would include those 6 things that's in that immediate ring: a publicist, a publisher, a manager, a tour manager, some kind of finance and data person, which could be a number of different titles.
Yep.
And some kind of producer, which might be like a revolving door of people, but generally speaking, someone who facilitates the artistic part, the actual making of the things.
Yep.
So each of these then branch out and will be responsible for dealing with other professionals, which is everything in the white solid circles. So that is people who are in the press. That is engineers, session musicians, songwriters, etc. That is lawyers, accountants, people responsible for investment and industry grants,
copywriters.
Exactly. Venue owners, other booking agents for venues, merch, people that make merch, whether that's designers or if you've got a design already, going to talk to printers. If you're an artist who is established, it is highly unlikely that you will be talking to these end people, but that's completely flipped on its head if you're in a position like we are. So what this represents to us, looking at it as like a DIY artist, is this almost becomes a list of everyone that we do have to talk to.
Or B. Or B. I think that's the other thing, DIY means do it yourself, obviously.
Yeah.
And that means you have to do all of that yourself.
Well, exactly. So in the case of things like engineering or lawyering, accountanting, that is...
Accountanting.
Analyticsing.
Accountancy?
Yeah.
I don't know.
You can make up words. I can make up words. Last week you were telling us you were Shakespeare because you had innuendoic coming out your mouth.
I love that word though. I don't care if it's not a real word.
What?
Innuendoic sounds fucking awesome.
Am I not allowed to love accountanting?
Accountanting. Just sounds ridiculous. I like it though. I guess so does innuendoic. Sounds ridiculous. Anyway.
They all sound ridiculous. We're making noises with our mouth meat. Like,
I can't do it because I got gloves on. Like,
anyway.
Mouth meat.
So there are certain roles here
Yep.
that we are going to have to do ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
There are and distribution is part of that. You've just done that. You've been our publisher doing distribution onto streaming platforms, which is the little line that exists in the top right hand corner.
Wow, I did heaps.
You did.
What's that one to the left? Music something supervision and yeah, okay.
Music supervisors and directors. So that would be at a different, like if you're running a TV network. You're choosing the music that's going to play over the sad scene of someone leaving MasterChef. That is what a music supervisor would do in that context, right? And that is someone who you, as a DIY artist, can make friends with, and
we need
court.
to make friends with some music supervisors for our stuff.
Sure.
Mm.
Yeah. So these. You can go out and have beers with these people or make friends with them in different ways to make sure that your presence is known and understood.
And that, I think, I just want to quickly jump on that point. All of my networking in the past has basically been with other musicians because they're the people I get. But that's not smart networking. The people that I should be talking to, and have been more recently, are people who work in those other areas and finding common ground where we both gain advantage from a collaboration.
Yeah.
Sure, we use this word collaboration in artistic collaboration all the time, but collaboration, as demonstrated by this this diagram, I should say. Is much bigger, and I don't think we have. I guess we do have songwriters on there and engineers, but that's really only 2 of the 50 friggin' circles on that page.
Yeah, I mean, there's this is of a particular level of detail. You can, of course, go more and more granular.
Totally. But I'm saying the.
Oh, right, I see what.
In a networking kind of respect.
Yeah, okay.
You shouldn't be doing as much networking with bloody artists, and we should be networking with all these other people more.
Yeah, and there's natural things that will emerge through this networking stuff. Even if you're not trying. So if you're an artist who is touring. Mm-hmm. Even if just in your hometown, you will naturally build relationships with venue managers, with booking agents. That stuff will emerge whether you like it or not. Because these are people that you have to email to get work. But there's a big difference between networking through necessity and networking intentionally to build a network.
Yeah, and it's something that I definitely find difficult because, like, why am I talking to this person? You know what I mean? It always seems... I don't like the word networking in general because it reminds me of corporate bullshit. But, you know, there are people out there who are just like us in different professions who want to do something special and find fulfillment in the work that they do. And they're not going to find it by hanging out with other accountants, necessarily. You know?
Yeah. And the same's true for things like radio DJs and things like that. If you're someone who is even at all scratching the surface of what it means to promote your music in the very obvious ways, so things like radio, you're going to naturally end up with these people save their phone number saved in your phone and whatever.
Yeah. Like Zan Rowe.
Okay.
Well, I mean, like that's I bring her up because she's really good at this. She's really good as a presenter of radio and music, and
she doesn't do radio anymore, though, does she?
Yeah, I think she does. I think she does some Double J stuff.
I thought she'd moved off into TV.
Well, yeah, mate. Like she kind of still jumps backwards and forwards. She does special features and stuff here and there. She's not doing a regular show anymore, I don't think. But what I'm getting at is she was kind of a really good person to demonstrate this because she would always be kind of hanging out with artists and seeing what they're doing, which is obviously really important for her career, you know.
Yeah, well, most DJs will have an active interest in spending time with artists too, because it increases their sense of cachet cachet rather in the industry. Yeah, to be seen to be going to gigs, to be seen to be actively engaged in what it means to make music in their community.
I don't know how people who do breakfast radio pull this shit off, mind you. You know what I mean? Like, you're kind of working two jobs at that point, you know, making a show and then, you know, that night going to two shows. And then you've got to find time to sleep in there when you get up at 3 a.m. to start at 5:30 a.m.
That's what afternoons are for.
True.
Yeah. Just realized that's probably the perfect job for me as someone who would sleep between...
Yeah, you have weird sleep patterns for sure.
Yeah. Well,
Nappy boy.
If there were no societal expectations, I would sleep between like 4 p.m. and 2 a.m.
You need to go and live in like Spain or something.
That's right. My siesta would never end.
Yeah. You could have 2 siestas.
But then at 2 a.m., all I want to do is get up and do things. So
it's the best time to do stuff.
It's exactly, apart from, you know, the fact that the world doesn't wake up for a few more hours.
Fuck them. What do they know?
But if I was working breakfast radio, that would be ideal.
We've talked about it. We've talked about taking this show into a radio studio at some point.
Well, we'll see.
Let's see. We need more of an audience.
Let's not get too big for our boots too quickly.
Hey, but this is the year of Delulu, 2024.
Year of Delulu.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, we've gotten
way off track. All right,
again.
Let's get back to the music industry.
We've got our... As I was saying, this outer ring to us as people who are many hat wearers represents either the people that we need to talk to or the people that we need to be to cover all our bases for things that we need to do. So you've just done this pathway of distribution onto streaming platforms. Now, that also could branch out into lots of things. Now, that, you know, while you're wearing that hat, is now the time that you start making friends with the music supervisors and directors and getting ideas about what projects they're working on that need music and where what we're producing could be a good fit, where there's overlapping audience and room for collaboration through, you know, working on promo together. Is there room to, again, while you're wearing that distributor hat, talking to radio stations, understanding in a direct way how to get ingested into their systems? There's you've put it up on through to Lost?
Mm-hmm.
Have you also uploaded it to Triple J Unearthed? Have you looked on the
No,
are we even going to do that? Are we interested in doing
I don't know.
We need to figure
There's a
that out.
discussion.
There's also what's the AMRAP? Is that the one? Yeah, AMRAP, which is the Australian regional music stations. So there's a process to get ingested into that.
I don't know any of this stuff.
So wearing that distributor hat has these other little arms that make the difference between you have to put a bit more effort in, but that is what's going to connect you out to all these other little opportunities that then ladder up into big opportunities.
Yeah, and I think in the way that we're working at the moment, I'm kind of relying on your knowledge around how I can help you. You know what I mean? Because I kind of was like, you need to help me with these things when we were producing it, and now it's kind of like your territory.
Yeah. This is the bit that I have some form in.
Yeah.
Whether that's happily or not. But I will reluctantly put my marketer hat on to do the marketing.
Yeah, I've been enjoying it though.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel as dirty as kind of the other stuff that we used to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This feels like there's purpose behind it.
Yeah, and there is. But
other than selling shit.
as if we were to put check marks next to the things that we've done on this list, like engineering, sure. The session musician songwriting stuff, sure. Lawyers in terms of like the various split agreements and whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, roughly let's tick that. Accountancy, sure. But then we get into, so that's these four on the left of the diagram. But analytics, we're very much at the start of the journey there. Lots
Well, we
more to
don't
do.
have we don't really have analytics except for the couple of people who've been watching us here, you know.
Yeah, I mean, but that will start growing as we start doing audience acquisition stuff.
Yeah.
Industry grant things, we're kind of hot and cold on this a little bit.
Well, we do
lukewarm
have
on
one
it.
coming up, which I mentioned to you earlier, a little late last week.
Yeah, so the stuff on our radar about what exploring that
will
would
open
be.
in 20 days, you know, which is something I think we should explore.
Seeking investment.
Yeah, we've kind of done that in the past.
Kinda. So there's this whole arm about agent and tour managers. This is in the bottom sort of right-ish area.
Yeah, which we're not really touching because of our goals at the moment.
Yeah, we can cross a lot of those off because we are less interested. But there is one arm on this which is other artists. Which so typically your agent would be setting you up on basically little play dates with other artists, which could lead to collaborations and could lead to all sorts of other opportunities. Now, other artists building that network is something we are actively interested in doing. But again,
we are doing it to a degree.
Yeah, but not necessarily with the level of intention that we could be.
Well, let me. I would like to say something to that because my intention around communicating with artists at this stage, like I said in the first half, is not about making music.
Yeah, it's more kind of letting them know we exist.
Letting them know that this is coming.
Yeah.
And that at some point it would be cool to work together.
Yeah. It can be difficult
Just
because
accepting that idea. You know?
planting the seed.
Yeah.
But like again, all this stuff is quite difficult to do without a release out.
Totally.
So it's more about being aware of them at this stage for us.
Mm-hmm.
It will become increasingly areas where we will have active to-do list items, action items that fall into these categories. And it's important to, again, like part of the reason that we're looking at this industry diagram is to give us that overview of where there's room to grow, where we can then, if you wanted to go deeper into this, you can do then like a SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Like where are the areas that we are strong in and we don't really need to be working hard to keep building strength in? Where are the areas that we're weak in and that we actively need to be spending time in? What opportunities are there that we're not taking advantage of, and what threats are there that we're worried about? You can almost draw that box up and then just put these things in there. and that's why this viewing of the industry at this kind of level is important, right? If we keep stepping around just quickly,
go on.
so marketing agencies and designers, etc. We're lucky enough that
You are one of those people.
I come from that background, so I can DIY that part. But for a lot of people, that won't be the case. Again, there's opportunities to kind of view this as a bit of a wibbly wobbly kind of space, and go, well, if you can make friends with people who are interested in maybe transitioning their work over from corporate work into something that's more interesting and artful, you can probably score a lot of this stuff for cheap or for contra. So you produce music, they produce artwork, and you frame yourselves up as collaborators. You post about the work that they're making for you on your socials. They post about the work that they've made that is like a gig poster or something on their socials, and you share audience. And you do this over and over and over again with different artists, different visual artists, different designers, whatever. And you're forming up this shared community between these compatible art forms. You know, that's a total opportunity that can cost you zero, that just exists out in the world if you're a musician. There's so as we keep stepping around, merch suppliers. At this stage, we haven't figured out what our merch strategy is going to be.
Because I'm not a massive fan. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of waste. I'm also not like a t-shirt. Everyone does a t-shirt. Like, some people like t-shirts, and that's great. But for me, I don't know. The band t-shirt seems a bit whatever to me. You know, if I was going to produce a t-shirt, I'd be looking at kind of collaborative stuff with people who already make t-shirts.
Yeah. It's a very, I suppose now, old school way of putting out or of generating income effectively. Yeah. So we in our model, specifically for the project that we're in, I think the feeling that seems to be emerging is that we're interested in different ways forward. So things like a Patreon, like, whatever, using our stems as a way of, having people throw us a few dollars and they get access to the stems.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to produce stuff for people, like things that have meaning for people, like, but I don't know if a t-shirt or a hat is necessarily that.
Yeah.
But
we also exist in a time, my point is that we exist in a time where there's other opportunities beyond just selling things.
Yeah.
That can fill that same niche.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not against it entirely. Like, for the right thing, like there might be a circumstance where making a t-shirt's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
For one particular song, because it speaks to fashion or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But not every song is going to speak to that, and not every song is kind of, or not even just as a band do I feel necessarily connected to that idea.
I also don't think it achieves our goals.
No.
So to go back to that,
I mean, it might if we're talking about income, but
yeah, but not in the same way that something like if we were to take a bit of a wider view of what merch can be, and we think of things like the other big goals, for example, being seen as a specialist, or seen as someone who has the form in the space, is seen as an expert, is what I'm looking for, around what it is to have a sustainable long-term music career.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to keep making this kind of content to the point where we have a mass that we can draw upon, things like courses, things like a book, those are pieces of merch, in inverted commas, especially a book. Like, that's straight up merch. That is maybe outside the normal definition of what you'd think of merch for a band, but is much more closely related to the goals in a direct way. And these opportunities are going to exist differently for bands all the time.
Mm-hmm.
One that I liked a lot was King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. They did a collaboration with a sunglasses manufacturer to produce these really vibey, weird sunglasses.
Yeah, see, I'm interested in that kind of stuff for sure.
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff because you're working with someone who is, an expert in their field. And that to me is very interesting. Whereas like doing a drop shipping design.
Yeah, here's a t-shirt that's printed on the same Gildan t-shirts as everybody.
And you buy as many in all the different colors as you want. It's like, no, there's no intention in that. That's just money. That's just revenue raising, And, we need money to exist, not putting that thought aside. And sure, at some point we might have to do that. But just to have a sustainable career. But, and this is where, you got to make those kind of decisions between the goals and whatnot. But I think we are in a lucky position in that we have a lot of structure that we've built and ideas around that structure and meta-narrative and all that we can draw upon to do something a bit more clever,
But having those things is true of everyone. Everyone has that stuff.
Yeah.
There's just... there's a way to go about this and step out into this world that's very perfunctory and just looks at, here's what everyone else is doing. I'm going to do those same things because I believe that's the expectation and that's the pathway to existing in the same way as these people do.
Yeah.
Or there's a way that goes, looks much more at like deep in both directions, deep internally to go, what's actually true of my practice and my existence on this planet, and what's true more widely, and goes, well, what's the audience out there that where are they not being served? Where are they not having their needs met in an interesting way that I can step into and create meaning for?
Frights themed get hair off your fingers in the shower thing. That's just what's been popping up in my Instagram feed in the last...
Get hair off your fingers in the shower?
when you're like washing your hair and you get hair on your hands and you're trying to get it off your hands, particularly for people with long hair, it's hard to get it off your hands sometimes.
You've got another hand.
I know, but...
You use your other hand.
I understand. But apparently this is a problem for some people.
One hand washes the other clean.
Maybe you only have one hand. It's a very small market.
You use your foot.
Anyway, okay, so merch, there's options there. What's next?
So things like, okay, so we're coming around the top of the circle now. So radio stations, we have not started to build any kind of network with radio stations.
Other than the people that I already know, which
yeah.
a couple I've told about and they're waiting on documentation. And releases.
But even that, like, even if you're someone who has zero music and you are at the very beginning of your journey, there is nothing that stops you from reaching out to radio stations and just on their public either phone line or their email
and just talking to them about what they're doing.
Well, and just asking questions and being curious. Hey, I'm someone who's interested in music as an art form. What does it look like for music to show up on your radio stations?
Yeah.
What would I need to do hypothetically as someone coming into the industry for the first time and trying to do a DIY thing?
And I think that hits upon a point that I think is very, in my head, is the demystification of this whole thing. Like all this that we're talking about here is about demystifying the process so that there's like, okay, so you can do this. It's not a secret. These are ways of doing this. There's not one way of doing it. There's thousands of ways, but here are some ways that work. And I think particularly one of the problems that, pops up is, it's so big for artists that it's so overwhelming that you can't, it's just really hard to touch any of this stuff.
It's this is where models like this are helpful.
Yeah.
Like this, and this is still an overwhelming model.
Totally.
Like I say, you could branch each of these outer circles off into thousands of circles and go so granular as to then be unhelpful in that direction, right? Yeah. But this model I think is really, personally I found it really useful in splitting up the brain space. So anyway, the point is that even if you've got nothing, each one of these bubbles probably represents, if you think about it for 10 minutes, you're going to find opportunities for you to open up conversation and start to build momentum in each of these spaces if you so choose, if they're helpful for your goals. So if we keep moving across streaming platforms, now streaming platforms tend to have quite an opaque relationship. We, in getting our music up on the streaming platforms, it's taken us like 10 weeks to actually put something on there.
Yeah, I mean, there was a whole heap of other stuff. I mean, it took about 2 weeks, 3 weeks to figure out what service to use.
Yeah.
I mean, we could have just picked one at random and just gone with it.
But once you have things on there, you can start courting the algorithm. So that means things like structuring your releases in such a way that you have this stepped. Like I have a release coming out every 2 weeks. I have something coming out every 3.
When you're training
things.
It at that point,
you are training it, and there's ways to interact with it, and there'll be specialists out there who understand this stuff much more deeply than I do.
Yeah, hit us up. I want to know. Tell us.
But it'll be things like making sure that you're updating your artist bio regularly.
What's ours say?
Well,
ours is a haiku at the moment.
Anyway, and this is going to be true of this, in this case, the video streaming services, because that's part of our thing. But updating your profile picture, updating like your artist playlists, making sure that you have people that are including you on playlists, so that you're training the algorithm to know what music you're similar to. If you imagine from the algorithm's point of view, you've got this person uploading music, they might determine things like, they might self-determine stuff like their genre broadly, and there might be some AI tools and other investigatory stuff that is happening to whatever's uploaded as part of the automatic ingestion process.
Yeah.
That's telling it things like BPM, and I know that danceability score is something that exists in Spotify's algorithm, for example. And so it's figuring out in broad strokes the type of music that might sit well next to your music, but it is going to more heavily weight human curation. So if you can find, as part of this step in the diagram, if you can find 20 friends that have Spotify accounts to each make 2 playlists of 10 songs that they feel like sit well with your song and include your song on it, Spotify is going to suddenly understand whose type of Discover Weekly playlist to be pushing your song out to. You've given it all this rich data, and it's going to want to use it. If you can do that across 10 releases, that's suddenly 200 playlists that you're on.
Yeah.
And that's just asking 20 friends for 5 minutes of their time.
Yeah. And particularly when they come from humans, like the bot accounts, I would argue, well, depends on the philosophy of the company, but the bots producing these playlists, as you say, are not as weighty as a human putting it next to something else.
Mm.
If Only Yesterday gets put next to, like I said, like Massive Attack or something, suddenly it has more cultural meaning to the algorithm. Forget about the people for a moment. Like the algorithm suddenly goes, okay, this person reckons that this song is associated with this other artist who did really well or whatever, or is culturally relevant. And suddenly it's like, okay, I'm going to serve it to all these people.
Yeah.
And you can, I don't know, like we don't know this really, but I would imagine that there's some kind of compounding effect that happens over time, as you were alluding
Absolutely.
to.
Like mass is mass, right? Like if you're on 10 playlists, like let's say that your new song comes out and you get 100 people to put it on playlists, that is still going to be numerically less than someone who's got it, that's been getting 10 of their friends to do it across 200 songs, and they've been doing it for 10 years.
Yeah.
That's still, they're still going to have twice as many playlists as you.
Yeah. Engagement from listeners is as important as engagements from artists, as in like as an artist. You're engaging with the process. These ultimately these streaming services and YouTube and that they're content providers. So if you're producing content on the regular, you're going to have an advantage over those people. Just off the top of my head, I'd say you'd have an advantage over people who only produce content sometimes, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, in a general sense, that's almost certainly going to be the case.
Yeah. Because they want their users to be on those platforms as much as possible.
Yeah. So if you are showing that you're someone who produces things regularly and has potential there for a recurring audience to be built, of course the platforms are going to look favorably upon that with their algorithms.
Yeah.
It stands like, how can it not be the case?
Yeah. And someone's going to turn around and tell us it's not the case. Like,
well,
hit us up.
It's a multifactorial thing. Like, there's going to be all sorts of stats around retention and around whatever. If you get people to put your song on playlists and they also never listen to the song or never listen to the to the playlist that it's on, that's also probably going to surface problems. So we might have to ask people like, hey, could you listen to this song in full and then put it on this, like give them very clear directions about how to actually do the process and help and get them to understand like this is part of gaming the algorithm put very, very openly.
Yeah, and I mean, the platforms themselves are notorious for not telling people what the gaming would look like.
Yeah, because if it's a cat and mouse, like all SEO is a cat and mouse game.
Yeah.
Search engine optimization is cat and mouse.
It's like the stock market. You don't tell anyone your new kind of trade that actually works regularly. You know, because everyone would use it and then it would stop working.
Yeah. So the stock market's probably not a great example because that's supposed to be, you know, the invisible hand of the market, whereas these algorithms are, you know, they are biased. They are.
I would argue that the stock market is biased with the way that it works.
Anyway.
All right. Well.
Moving along, things like influencers, we haven't started talking to them. Journalists and press, we haven't started talking to them. So we have so much room as DIYers ourselves to be building these relationships, and this is going to be my job over the next week. Is you know,
picking one or two and engaging with those.
Basically, building out a list. Here's a list of press outlets and journalists that will be relevant to us going forward. Here's a piece of writing that I can push out to each of them, and I'm going to be doing exactly that. Some very friendly emails.
Yeah. I've been trying to do this in my own practice and not trying to do everything. But is your intention I need to kind of like focus on a couple of things in this process, or are you going to try and do
I'm probably going to take a more broad approach in the first releases because, again, we don't know what's going to work. So if I put all my eggs into, say, influencers and journalists, and that is not the right fit for us, as it turns out, then it's kind of wasted effort. Whereas if I put a bit of effort into everything, we're probably going to see areas where traction is easier, and we can over the course of the next 10 releases can start to
optimize.
We can start to think about optimizing because we'll have data.
Yeah. So I'm very interested to hear how this all goes. Or see how it all goes.
Yeah, and we'll be forming it up as we go. At the moment, it's all things. But anyway, I want to touch on. So this just to touch again to the start of what we were talking about. This is like the shape of the industry at large. And as I said, I think this can be very overwhelming for artists that are
overwhelming for
DIYing it. So what I've also done is instead of looking at, I've put together a second diagram.
Ooh.
That instead of it being broken down by role and then thinking about what people with those job titles would be doing, I've also broken it down by function. So thinking about the things that they're doing. With a view that is a much simpler diagram. So let's pull that one up. So here we go. So after thinking about all those little... Ooh.
Stop it.
What are you doing?
Accidentally
Wait,
hitting the keyboard.
I'm moving around.
I'm
Ooh.
moving us over the other
Hello.
side so we can see the blue thing.
Cool. So, so the six kind of themes that emerge around that same central team that you would have put together if you were working in a in a more traditional kind of label led situation as an artist. We've still got those same titles, so publicist, publisher, manager, agent, tour manager, finance and data, and producer. But we're breaking them down into what they actually do. So these new titles that we can be thinking of is touring, money, creative, media, distribution, and general. So those are our main areas. Now, if you're someone who's already making music, something like creative makes a lot of sense intuitively. You understand what would be done in the creative space.
Yeah.
It's
what you do.
It is the sitting down. It is the writing things that are true and meaningful to you.
Mm-hmm.
It is the making noises and the capturing the noises and assembling them into some kind of compelling package for your audience to enjoy.
Yep.
So this is things. This also includes things like collaborating with other musicians, with songwriters, with the technical people to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, we all understand what that would be like. So if you spent one day a week on that, that would be something that you could build momentum in and have things in the chamber. You can have a half-written song that you can then sit down and write. It's easy to understand what building momentum in that space would be. Now, I would argue that having an equal understanding of what you should be doing and what it looks like to build momentum in each of these six spaces is as important. Right?
Totally.
So
the argument I make all the time. Being a creative is all of these things, not just that purple.
Well, if you're DIYing it, it is. I think if you're in the kind of,
I don't know. I even if you're a mad popular artist like a Doja Cat, there's no fucking way you get to that level without understanding a lot of the rest of that.
That's probably true, but you'd be able to spend less of you. You might have to have the same understanding.
Yeah,
you'd be able to spend less of
your
time.
But maybe that's my perspective on this: is the understanding. It's so that you can see other people in your team doing a certain amount of work and go, that is not in line with the goals and vision of what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
stop it. Do this instead.
Yeah, sure.
We've talked about this.
Yeah, you got to be the ringmaster of the circus ultimately.
Totally. You know, so and this is universal as far as I'm concerned in any industry where you're managing other people.
I think that's fair.
Like, you have to understand what's going on on the bare minimum of fun, on a surface level. You know, if you've done it before, that's invaluable.
Yeah,
you know,
and for that reason,
why we're here.
Again, having these kind of models for me is really useful to understand, even if on that surface level, what do I need to be paying attention to? And what am I potentially missing? Because if you're someone like me who is prone to start to get like focused down all the time, this is a strategy that I have to break that open and make sure, like, oh no, I am focusing on everything.
You know, the other thing that kind of occurs to me that this helps with is if you are a multi-person artist,
like a band
in our case.
Distributing the
workload out. You know, like I can already see in here that there's kind of like there's you know, I can say that I'm probably heavily involved in the creative and the money component. We're not touching touring, so that's kind of like a black square, a black
wedge.
I wouldn't know what the version of a 6 quadrant would be, but it's like whatever that is.
I don't know, sextant,
yeah.
Sextrant?
Yeah.
Probably sextrant.
And then, you know, management, you know, we're kind of both doing that to a degree, you know, what that general kind of thing looks like. I'm getting out there and talking to people, you'll be doing the same thing. when it comes to EPKs and that kind of stuff. Distribution, I can say that probably falls to me, and media probably falls to you. You know, if we were to put Matt into these boxes, it probably fits into the creative and the general, I would say.
Yeah, probably mostly the creative. I
Yeah.
think that
He's heavily involved in that section currently. That's not to say that, you know, he's got skills in all those other areas, particularly in touring. If we ever decided to tour,
yeah, that would be 100%, mate.
he'd be all over that. But yeah, so you know, it works functionally as a distribution of roles.
Yeah,
thing
sure.
as well, which I think is quite good.
Yeah. So with that in mind, like let's just step through them, right? So I'm going to go anti-clockwise. So we've spoken about creative, but the goal would be to build momentum in each of these spheres so that they can inform each other, and you're not there should be irons in the fire across all of them at the same time. The difficulty with a lot of artistic practice, from my external observation, has been that I've now made this song. I have this completely finished track. What the hell do I do with it? And then you put it up on a streaming service and make a single post on social media, and go, job done. It's either gonna work or it's not gonna work. People are either gonna like it or not. I could be the next big artist or not, and because I feel like I've done everything that I can do, it's now in the hands of the gods as to whether that's going to be successful or not. And that's just demonstrably not true. So having things in the chamber ready to go across all 6 of these is, in my mind, the way to make it so that when you do release something, you've got all these avenues to give it further momentum, that it can be driving things, that release can be driving things across these other areas, and things in the other areas can be driving that release.
Which is what's happened with us building meta-narrative around what we're doing with Fright.
Yeah, so meta-narrative would fit into general, right? So it's talking
I'd
about...
say it fits into media as well.
Possibly,
Or
but
it informs media.
When in general, I'm talking about big picture planning, right? So that is things like the goal setting we've been doing. That is things like there's none of this is neat, but things like figuring out who the personas are. That's part of the creative as much as it is part of the media. As much of it is part of general, right? Figuring out who our audience is. You could also say it's part of money, because it's where it's people who are ultimately going to be opening their wallets to sustain what we do.
Yep.
And it could also be part of distribution, because it's who the audience for those other further abstracted products is going to be. And if we were talking about touring, it's the people who are going to be at the shows, right? So you know, stuff it's totally possible for stuff to fit into all of the wedges. But so just stepping around, talking about what those irons in the fire might be. So for money, right? So the little description I've written here is getting financial support and protecting assets and IP, grants, contracts, collecting info that informs things like merch, which regions to tour in, etc. So we're talking about the data and analytics at that point, effectively. So if you were to say, you've just done 4 weekends of touring, right? So you've just done minimal touring. Let's say you did 8 shows, so you did like a Friday night and a Saturday night in 8 different towns.
Yep.
That would give you a lot of data about things like, are Fridays or Saturdays more profitable? Which of these 8 towns do we have more of a following in? Compared to the size of those towns, do we think that we have room to grow in certain regions and maybe less so in others? What other opportunities for promo and other venues exist in those towns? Like that starts to fall into touring, I guess. But if the data that you get off a tour can give you all this stuff to then sit and think about in terms of the money side of things. So processing that analytics, having that data that's there ready to be interpreted, is something that you can be collecting that data and know that, okay, I have a spare day. I'm now going to structure that data and have a look through it and identify opportunities that then can go and sit in the general like goal planning or in media, because I know there's a podcast in that town that's really popular and it looks like we have room to extract more money out of that. So I'm going to put a to-do list item in the media bucket that says, reach out to this podcast in this town or find opportunities to get bigger promo in that town. So that's ways that you can have irons in the fire in that particular bucket. In touring, just having a tour booked. Like if you have a song, if you're planning on launching a track and you're waiting for that song to be out before booking in to have a launch party or to have tour dates, like you're going to be waiting months and the song's going to be sitting out there just languishing, not doing anything while you're waiting for this tour to roll around. So making sure that you have foresight about when things are calendarized so that you can make bookings in advance and have things line up better is a way that you can easily have an iron in the fire there, or have little dates lined up with venue bookers or with these kind of tour. I can't remember the title. It would have been on the promoters. There we go. To have these dates lined up where you can be talking about things. So having those lined up just before a song comes out, so you can say, "Hey, let's." We've got this song coming out.
Look at an established artist and what they do in their album cycle. You know, part of them releasing an album is having a tour booked ahead of even potentially announcing. You know, or they use the tour booking as part of the announcement rollout. The record's coming out on the 22nd of August. Tour starts in September. We're touring Australia, the US, in September, October, November, and then in January, February, we're touring Europe. You know, that kind of shit.
Yeah. And you think about how much stuff falls off that, like artwork, how much artwork you need to have prepared to be able to announce stuff like that.
All that stuff.
Yeah. So things like general, right? If you've defined your audience and you have this really clear idea of who they are, and you have an idea of your goals, and you have an idea of what the meta narrative stuff is, all the stuff that we've been
talking about,
planning.
Yep. All of this kind of falls out pretty quickly at that point.
Well, yeah, but also, like, how do you want to grow and change that over time? We've just done a cycle of defining what our goals for this first release are going to be, but it's not too early. As soon as that song is out, to start talking about
the next one,
what the goals are going to be for the next one. Have we achieved those goals for the first one?
I think that's something that I want to do more of, is just looking at our goals, like I said, weekly, and going, did we achieve what we set out to do this week? Was there intention in the work that we were doing, and that kind of stuff? That's kind of personal for me, but I think it's very valuable in relation to what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Because it keeps you accountable for what you're doing, instead of just wafting through the room and hoping for the best, you know?
Yeah. So that's the kind of knowing the next step in there is like, and of course there's going to be things that, like you say, everything kind of falls out of that pretty quickly. And that's kind of where we're at, is that if you have that next step figured out, then the faster you figure out that next step, the faster you can start having its little tendrils setting up to do items in the next things. So distribution that one's kind of easier to have irons in the fire. It's literally, if you have songs, get them into
put them out.
Yeah, make sure that you have the artwork ready to go for them. Have them sitting there because you can time the releases, right? Like you
can time them down to the minute. In whatever code you want, as long as it's been distributed to the platforms.
Yeah.
You can choose when it becomes visible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's no reason not to have your next 16 weeks of music ready to go and have them there. Like the ones that I always think about is these seasonal tunes. So it's become very accepted. I wouldn't go so far as to say cool, but it's become a normalized part of being an indie musician to release like a Christmas tune.
I love a Christmas tune. I think releasing a Christmas tune fits into a lot of other categories. So forget about the season.
But as if they're not recorded at this time of year.
Oh yeah, they're totally recorded like not at Christmas. As if anyone has time in November to December to do any amount of creative stuff.
No.
You know.
So have those I would imagine that a lot of the stuff that is going to come out at Christmas time is already in those services.
Yeah.
And it's got a date set, and there's like the artwork creation cycle and all that stuff is happening right now.
Yeah, I mean,
for stuff that's going to come out in November, December.
If you want to kind of a bit more of a tangible thing that isn't music, as an example, like we did a thing on Big Mouth for the season that just came out like earlier this year, 2 years ago. That's how long that's been in development. They would have finished it a year ago and delivered it.
Yeah.
You know. But something like South Park is very different, or the old South Park, very different.
Yeah.
But that was reactive. That's like a news style program. Whereas you can, as a musician, be absolutely structured in what you do. You don't have to be reactive unless you're like a meme lord or whatever.
Yeah.
On the socials.
But it's also why all that brainstorming stuff that we were doing about what's important to our audience, and we were having things pour out like the Olympics and the US election and whatever else, like identifying stuff that is going to be useful to our audience then informs this stuff.
Yeah.
That's why it's kind of important to do that. Once you step up into the thinking about it at an industry level, like it all cycles back. It's all been planned, folks.
Yeah.
So it's very easy when you're just a consumer of this stuff to think like, oh, it just happens like on the day,
Nah, there's a lot of consideration into this kind of stuff.
Yeah, the candy canes just show up on the shelf. They've been made, 2 days ago.
Yeah.
In the North Pole.
And don't get me wrong, sometimes that's the case, but it's a very different process and has a lot of just like with both of these processes, the word intention comes up again. If the intention is to produce a current affairs style comedy program, you have to shoot it that week and you have to release it that week, because if you release it next week, it's outdated. Makes no sense. So your processes need to fit that way of working, which is kind of how South Park worked.
But again, that stuff should fall out of your goals. It should be all goal driven. It shouldn't be just something that happens because it happened to, that's how the cards fell.
Yeah.
And that's how you felt that morning.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't ever finish anything, like we've demonstrated before.
And how many artists do you know that never finish anything?
Many.
It's if anything, it's the norm, right?
Yeah.
So with this view of we're trying to set up a system, we're trying to build this little engine for a thing that is going to maximize opportunities for success.
Yeah.
This is kind of the way to do it.
Yeah.
That yes, there are other ways. You can be successful other ways. And everyone's engine is going to be different.
Yeah, and that's the important thing to remember. The thing that we're doing is how it suits how we're our goals and our intentions.
Or at least we hope so. We're trying.
Well, the part of it is exploring and learning and understanding what that looks like for us.
Yeah. But there are going to be things that are clearly the wrong fit, and there's going to be things that are maybe the right fit, and there's going to be things that are absolutely the right fit.
And something that didn't work early might work later.
And that's why it's important to revisit.
Yeah.
So we've come full circle.
Do you want
right.
to? You going to?
Well, so the next one was media, right?
Media.
And then that brings us back to the start. So the way that you'd have irons in the fire in the media thing is to literally be the process that I'm going to be doing this week. This is where I am. This is the particular bucket that I'm in this week, which is the setting up these kind of the meta narrative componentry of our story, out into podcasts, magazines, social media, etc. So this is now that we have a track that is finished, we have a date that it's coming out. We can. I am now in a position to be writing these little articles and essentially submitting these effectively an editorial that someone else can slap their byline on and make changes to.
Yep.
And if they want to interview us, if they want to have a little chat, we're giving them content. We're seeding their publications.
We're helping them
with our
do
content.
their jobs.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I'm and then of course that's going to come out in a month, 2 months, whatever. It's going to take time to get through their production pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
But now is the right time to be putting those seeds out. And even if we're too late for their publication cycles, which we're going to be in some cases, because it's going to their cycles are going to be longer than 10 days, and I'm not going to finish this stuff today. Like there's.
It's fine though, because this is about these
about building
early
those
releases.
relationships.
Well, it's about building relationships and proficiency in the way that we do work. That's what the early releases and a lot of the stuff that we're working on now is about for us. So having it not quite come out at the right time is not a bad thing. Having it come out at all is the kind of goal, you know.
And having it be something that we can revisit and talk about and be able to say, like in some ways, it coming out at the wrong time is more interesting for this part of the product, because then we get to talk about it and we get to say, we think it came out a little too late. We think that it would have been better if we could do this, and that's what we're going to try next time, and then compare.
Yeah.
If everything went right and we were showing up here every week going, things went amazing again this week. Oh, look at us go from win to win. It's kind of...
It's either completely delusional or useless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like...
We need to celebrate the wins, but we're not going to win... Look, we live in the real world here. We're going to fall flat on our face more often than we're going to land on our feet.
But at the same time, we do live in relative comfort in a first world country. Like we come from an incredibly privileged position to be doing this stuff anyway.
Yeah.
So every day is a win. Like we talk about this.
Yeah, we're not getting shot at. That's nice. There's no guns here.
But we talk about these. I've lost my train of thought.
Privilege.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that.
Privileged. We're in a privileged position to be able to explore this.
Chasing our dreams.
Chasing the dreams.
So we're talking about this, like to even have the opportunity to chase our dreams, to be able to step down from the work that we're doing, to roll it down, to be able to take a step back and still be able to put food on the table and whatever else, is an incredibly lovely position to be in.
Yeah. I would argue that it's quite easy to live on fuck all in the grand scheme of things. Like,
if you're willing to make some key sacrifices, sure.
Yeah, but like sacrifices to us, like compared to the rest of the world, are not really sacrifices. Like I still have a warm bed to sleep in every night. I'm not sleeping in my car. I'm not sleeping in a shack with no electricity in a town where I'm likely to get killed when I'm 25. You know, like that's crazy, man. Like that's an environment that is not suitable for what we're talking about. So, you know, I'm happy to take lots of sacrifices to get towards what we're trying to do, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's fun.
Not quite that many sacrifices.
No, not quite that many. Well, like I said, you wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah, art making becomes very different in those circumstances.
Yeah. Do you want to wrap this up?
Sure. I think that little grateful moment was nice.
Yeah, well, I'm grateful for what we're able to do, and I'm grateful for you being on the journey with us.
Shall we switch back to the main shot?
Oh yeah,
how about that?
Yeah, sorry, I forget that we're on the graph, on the diagram. There we go.
Anyway,
yeah. So go on.
So that's a little industry overview, and it was very artist centric, because that's what we are.
Yeah.
So we are interested in.
Be interesting to see it from a perspective of, say, a publicist or a manager or a record executive. I'd
Yeah.
love to see what that might look like from their perspective.
Yeah. Well, the interesting part of that, of course, is that artist will just be one node, and they will have just as many nodes coming off the other sides. And that's like your input. That's where your product is coming from. It's important to have good relationships with your suppliers. But
That's a good way of putting it.
well, because if
We're
you
like
view it,
we're like vegetable providers for a restaurant,
that's right.
or farmers.
Yeah,
We're farmers.
we're inspiration farmers.
Yes. Wow, that's a load of wank. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, we've got to harvest those little asparaguses of
ideas.
Yeah. And cook them up into delicious dishes. But in any case, they will have their own networks of things that they're supposed to do, the people that can transform that product into another thing that then makes it into something else. So like, it's if you view it as if you're willing to view the music industry and the music making process as a market that you're participating in, that it's a product, it becomes easier to parse, to be honest. Like if
it makes it so much easier to exist in.
Well,
You're not as emotionally. Well, it's not about the emotional investment so much, but for me, things don't hurt as much. As an emotional person,
yeah,
putting something out and hoping that people like it, I kind of don't care at this point. Old me cared a lot, and not getting people listening and stuff, that kind of hurt a lot.
Yeah.
But now I don't really care. Like I'd love people to listen to it. That would be amazing. But if people don't listen to it, that's a data point. It's not not something to cry into the pillow about, though. You can do both. Can do both.
Crying into the pillow about my data points. I think we've just got an album title. But
sounds like something like an AFX Twin like thing. That's what it sounds like in my
maybe.
Anyway.
But it should still be emotional. You should still care about what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I think it's a much more realistic way to look at it, and a way that it puts the control into your hands in a way that being like a more chaotic and more abstract, into like choosing to be more abstract in the way that you deal with the industry relationship. It doesn't give you control. In fact, it takes control from you.
Yeah.
Because you're just crossing your fingers and hoping.
Yeah, I don't like playing lotto with my career.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of always a lotto anyway.
Well, no. Look, there's two ways of looking at it for me. There's active and passive engagement in what you're doing, and what we're doing.
And it is much
active.
more active.
Yeah.
True.
I don't like passive engagement.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on that
note,
let's not be passive, and let's go on about the rest of our days in an active and mindful way.
Intentional.
That's
the word of the day.
We've come full circle yet again.
I'll do it.
You can do the sign-off today.
Thanks for joining us on the weekly Frights stream, where we talk about our journey from non-sustaining old corporate careers to sustainable artistic careers that are fulfilling and also, hopefully, exciting for you guys. I'm Josh. This is Simon. You can jump on our website at frights.band, and there are all the links to all the socials, and they will start to be populated soon. New music in about 10 days, roughly on the 4th of July. I can't remember the exact date. That doesn't matter for me at this point, because that's not the intention for this first release. But there is new music coming out, and hopefully week on week after that there'll be music to be heard.
Very exciting.
Very exciting. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again.
Yeah, hope that made the whole industry thing a bit clearer for everyone. And if you have questions, of course, leave them in comments, etc. And we might check them. Who knows? We might not.
We're still working on it.
If you did want to follow along for future episodes, frights.band is where you can find the socials.
Yep. All right. See you later. Bye. Bye.